The shard comes up first, a palm's width of mirror taped to an entrenching tool, a sliver of late afternoon sky inside its silver. It shows a black rectangle of window just above the rubble wall, and then it blinks white. Instant, almost pretty, as a bullet flakes the glass to sugar and the shard atomizes in a spit of rain and grit. The slap hits their teeth before the crack rolls up the lane. The problem writes itself in stone. Someone owns the broken run between them and the square. The radio man is fading, twilight is closing, and the first thing they've lost can't be unbroken. Men flatten against cold rock, bellies wet in the farm terrace mud, because the lane has been ruled into a theorem with no allowance for error. Low shutters rattle in the gust that follows, water sheeting off a fractured trough, a door moaning in its hinge. They measure by inches, heel tucked, rifle laid down, chin turned sideways so it makes less mistake of being a forehead. A white scar shows on a distant slate and a fresher white smudge just to its left. Old shot, new shot, and for a moment it feels the whole hill town is charcoaled with past failures and waiting to add one. Corporal Mason Hale does math in his head the way other men say prayers. He holds up 2 fingers apart, remembering slap then crack, counting a smooth 1 and 300, maybe 350 meters. Sound slow in the damp air, light fast as always, dust before report when range is a few football fields. He stores the angle, the window left of the bell tower's stone lip, elevation above the terrace line, and lets breath go back into the fog, threading the olive trees. It doesn't give him a solution, it gives him a horizon to shoot for. Sergeant Ruth Delgado is already on a knee, palm on the radio man's collarbone, where the blanket's slick with rain and a darker slick beneath. A pulse answers, thin, hurried, losing ground. Under an M1 with fixed bales and a chin strap unfastened for air, his face is pale. Morphine would quiet the pain, movement would save the man. Both require standing. The SCR 536 beside him mutters in a wet whisper, squelch and a woolly voice thinning like a candle in wind. The battery is a second drain on everything they have left and counting down. Static gnaws at the ether, the handset slick in Delgado's palm, metal smelling faintly of ozone and river water. She hails the company net for smoke or rifle grenades from second squad to make a gray curtain between this low wall and that sculpted blind where a rifle waits. The answer stutters and frays to nothing, a call sign drowned by weather and stone. Without timing, there will be no coordinated bloom, just guesses, and guesses here mean stepping into a throat already aimed. Private Tino Bernardi presses his cheek to wet mortar and works a map of terraces the way a child remembers zigzagging to the well. Low voice. 2 levels down, a mule path runs behind a line of fig trees. It looks like a dead end, but a slot through a collapsed garden wall leads to a quick step across the lane and a goat pen's shadow. He sketches roof lines in dirt, cards overlapped, bell tower on the right, the arched belfry black, a rope just visible, swaying slow. He says he's walked this place. He trusts what used to be there, and he knows trust can cut. The drizzle thickens and pushes sideways, a gull gray veil that hides and then reveals the lip of the roof where dust jumped. Loose shutters clap, then hang. The bell rope in the square gives a lazy nod that feels like a heartbeat. Hale watches it and thinks, wind vane, then calls it a liar. Towers hide watchers and decoys, and movement there could be messenger, misdirection, or nothing. That swing, set by gusts funneling down stone lanes, can drown the minute tremor you need to read a shot's origin. Splayed on the terrace below, a boot heel shines with rain and mud, a carrier waiting for the word to lift. Litter evacuation is cruel math. 2 must stand, lift, pivot, step. In that span, the crown of each head rises above a 3-foot wall, exactly the line a finish-proud marksman draws to. Delay, and a different clock expires. Delgado looks at the radio man's clenched fist and knows time is a blade moving across his palm. Hale's eye slips from rope to notch, from notch to that faint blossom of slate dust still clinging to the roof lip, wet now to paste. Doctrine says a good sniper fires twice from a hide and then relocates. Here, the first shot shredded a mirror held higher than a helmet would be, telling the shooter where the crown would appear. The second shot would find the man who trusts the rule. He chews the inside of his cheek and tries to catch the rhythm of the gusts and make it work for them once. A pigeon rockets out of the bell tower mouth, feather shrapnel shedding down, and every eye shifts because motion is a magnet and fear is honest. For a heartbeat, everything is cue and miscue, a bird's panic mimicking echo, a shadow sliding across a window that might be arm or wind. Hale resets his view and reruns the delay he clocked. Dust before crack. If they can make him show dust again, they can draw a line and paint it with fire to buy 5 seconds that matter. Delgado asks without asking, a tilt toward the bayonet fixed to an M1, a glance at a dented helmet rolled into a pocket of rubble and pooled water. Pocked steel, khaki strap frayed with salt and rain. Convincing because common. It carries more than weight. If it rises, it declares someone here will be stupid or brave, and the difference is thin as rain skin. Bernardi's breath steams as he whispers about missing stones that turn gaps into frames, places that look like cover but make a silhouette for a man with glass. Homeside bias makes him insist old walls are safe. The drizzle makes limestone read the same either way. He traces the mule path again, the orchard at the bottom where fog pools thicker, the wire-choked gap where a fence collapsed in summer and bled rust. Noise there will carry. A gust draws a line down the lane and lifts a flap of tar paper from a fallen beam, then lays it down. The wind doesn't care about timing. It listens to the street shape, the snap of shutters, the gaps where doors are missing. Hale slides fingers into the cold ring of the helmet and feels an edge where someone else's rifle once clipped it. He can count on gusts to twist smoke in 20 seconds and make the bell rope mimic a head's bob unless they teach the silhouette to be imperfectly human. Delgado tries the radio again, cups the microphone to keep its heart warm. What comes back is a smear of vowels and a number that could be range or prayer. Wet drains the battery like a wound drains pulse. When it dies, they will be alone with what they can do by eye. She taps the case and the radio man twitches his mouth, at pain or at the tap, she can't tell, and she counts a new window closing. Under his breath, Hale inventory checks. Periscope gone. One handy-talkie drowning. A few rifle-mounted smoke grenades that may burn thinner than a wish in this wind. An M1 with bayonet reaching maybe head and shoulders above this wall. If they time it to a gust that moves shutters, rope, and fig leaves at once, maybe their decoy survives. Fumble it, and they don't just lose a helmet. They show the enemy their exact hand. His gaze returns to roofs, slate and terracotta, where white dust tells stories. In hill towns along this line, slate releases pale dust when nicked, visible even in drizzle if you tune your eyes. The old scar sits a finger width to the right of a new one. The new one's damp edge shines in the late light. That shine becomes a metronome. See that jump again, and you can trace a clean line you don't own. Bernardi hefts the M1 with the fixed bayonet, steel dark with moisture, measures reach. Bayonet plus rifle plus arm equals maybe 2 meters above the terrace, enough to show a crown behind a 4-foot wall without a man standing. Idiot simple math complicated by wet webbing and numb fingers. The chin strap is soft, its holes stretched, buckle slick. In a gust it will spin if it wants, and wrong if you don't watch. Delgado traps the radio man's heat with blanket and body, eyeing the lane as if memorizing steps. When they lift, the carriers must pivot and walk, knees bent, sandbags of human weight flexing in their arms. Smoke grenades tick like a promise with no guarantee. She clocks without a watch, counting the way color dims as afternoon slides toward a fog dusk that will erase contrast within 20 minutes. Hale smears rain from his eyebrows, squints at the belfry. A bell rope's truth can colonize the bigger one they need. Window vibration, curtain shrug, a wink of slate dust half a second early. A marksman in pride might hold a shot until a decoy is too tempting to ignore. The smarter pride might hit the stick, then the hand on it. He makes a bet against his own caution and hates himself for making it. Backwash carries whetstone, olive bark, the copper tang that follows gunfire. Delgado's jaw sets. No movement, no evacuation, no evacuation, no breath for the man whose eyes open and close too fast. They can't wait for perfect in gusts that don't keep bargains. They need slate's dust, a line to scribble suppressive arcs on, even if the arcs are guesses. Behind them, the terraces fall toward the orchard, where fog collects like wool in a hollow. Bernardi's mule path offers a snake's path out, backs to walls, a crawl that becomes a sprint over a wire-choked gap beside a goat pen. Pen slats are rotten. They'll give and groan. He insists the next wall gives kneeling cover, but Hale thinks about missing stones and fire slits. Familiarity is a blindfold when glass is watching. Another gust, and with it a shutter's punctuation, then a slam open, too perfect a cue. Hale raises a hand, drops it, testing timing in his bones. The helmet sits in a rubble cup, like a question. The chin straps fray, looks like a fuse. A smooth rise is wrong. No human ever lifts perfect. The decoy will need a micro-wobble, or the shooter will smell the trick like cordite. Delgado leans close, voice a thread. Can they stitch counter-suppressive toward that roof long enough to keep the enemy down for the 5 seconds it will take to pry the litter through the lane's throat? Hale keeps words behind his teeth. Sound lives in fabric, bounces off stone, and nods, a concession to the theater they're about to stage with a steel pot and a stick. He starts counting gusts. 1, 2, 3. Wait. A trickle threads down into their cubby, cutting a dark line through dust and ash. It reads like writing. Hale taps the helmet, then the bayonet. We make a head and see who blinks. Rain beads on the pot, hesitates, and lets go. The lane holds its breath. Fingers work blind in the rubble hollow, thumbs and forefingers fumbling at a strap gone eel slick. The buckle sours under mud. Hale feels the fray, a notch someone worried at years ago, and ties a quick half-hitch around the bayonet's crosspiece so the helmet won't skate. The blade locks in with a quiet click, reach now a man and a half above the terrace, enough height to show a crown without the life beneath. He breathes slate and damp cordite and nods to Delgado to count the move against the radio man's pulse. They need wind to cover their lie. The lane's a corridor broken by a wall, more holes than stones. Motion telegraphs. Bernardi chins toward a never-latched shutter that claps the wall in gusts. The wind comes down from the church square like a hand opening and closing. The bell rope sways at a separate rhythm, pendulum slow, background motion that can mask the tiny settle of a rifle after recoil. Hale lays a palm on the terrace cap and feels the masonry's faint tremor between gusts. He wants the helmet's rise hidden in a shutter the town makes by itself, or the lane will spit another spark and they'll have panic to throw back. Delgado checks the handy-talkie's whisper with her thumb on the bar. The set murmurs, an ocean in a tin, battery draining faster with every damp breath in its case. She calls for smoke and hears only tired crackle from a net, too far and too wet. Her other hand never leaves the radio man's collarbone. She counts, feels the flutter slow with the light. The litter's folded beside her boots. Straps are slick. Delay is bleeding. She looks from Hale to the helmet on the stick. He mouths, "Wait." She looks at the bell rope and thinks of 2 men who'll have to stand into that fire, ribs exposed, and nods anyway. Bernardi isn't watching the helmet. He's reading stone. He fingers the terrace wall, its gaps, the holes farmers once pulled from to patch paths. Missing blocks create little rectangles of sky that make a man in the wrong place into a target. He taps one with a knuckle. It answers hollow. Bad cover if you believe it. He wants to pull them onto the low orchard path under the wall, but that takes crossing a wired gap no one can see from here. He keeps the knowledge folded tight. All knowing is useless until the helmet opens the world again. Hale angles the bayonet under the rim and tests balance. The M1's weight is forward. The knot sits near the fork of wood and steel. The pot wants to turn into wind like a stubborn vein. He smears mud on the steel for dulling and sneaks burlap under the rim to kill shine an enemy might see. It looks wrong because it is. Head without shoulders, a cut-off apparition. The trick is to teach it human sway, an imitation of fear that looks casual. Delgado's eyes flick between shutter, bell rope, orchard. Gusts funnel down the lane in a pattern that won't hold. They thin. She imagines the smoke they might get and discards it. She raises 3 fingers. Bernardi raises 2. Hale mouths 1. They wait for the shutter to clap. The rope lags, slow and separate. The drizzle threads thinner still, a curtain that hides nothing. Hale leans to put his ear where echoes might be honest, and hearing only their own wet scuff, makes a choice that will save them or write them into stone. The helmet goes up too clean. The bayonet shaft arcs like drill, not flesh, and Delgado hisses a flat, no-through teeth. Hale adjusts. Elbow quivers, as if the hand on the stick knows it might die. The chin straps fray, flutters like a hesitant thought. A gust bows the shutter, the rope lags, and he lets the head crest the terrace with a tremble that could be breath. The stick lightens as the wind takes the pot's edge. He prays the wobble reads human. They see it before they hear it. White dust jumps on a roof lip, left of the bell tower, a moth bloom of slate. A fraction later, the helmet jerks. The slap punches steel with a neat black mouth. The crack crosses the square, a heartbeat late. Hale tastes iron. Men flatten harder. The strap whips through the new hole like a tongue. The helmet spins on the stick as if trying to shrug a touch. A nest is marked. A ghost develops edges. Hale's pencil is already out, a stub sharpened mean. He jabs it to the terrace cap and scratches a line at the angle from his eye to that dust, calibrating with the delay he counted. He marks roof lip left and a quick roofline cuneiform on wet stone, a map that will be mud by dark. He digs a boot toe beside the mark so he can return when his eyes are ruined by fear. He runs the arithmetic, sound at roughly 340 per second, dust before noise, high vantage, a few hundred meters, and snaps the pencil stub pressing too hard. He stuffs the half into his pocket and signals with a flat palm. Delgado's hands open, then flatten. Go. The suppressive fire is brief and savaged by economy. 3 shots spaced with discipline, not panic bursts. A tracer stitches an arc that licks the slate lip, sparks jumping where the dust jumped, chips flying. It's not to kill so much as to keep the man on the roof down for 2 counts while other lives crawl under a compromised sky. Echoes in the lane are liars, rolling off church stone to sound like everywhere, but dust is honest. Bernardi is moving as low as a man can, sliding on elbows and knees, each stone bruise a separate memory. He reaches the orchard notch, where terrace meets terrace, and parts a tuft of moss to see wire. Rusted barbs snarl the gap like a sleeping animal with just enough life to bite. He holds his boot hair high to test sag without touching, and decides he'll take wire's music for speed if he must. He whispers to Delgado a plan that smells of olive leaves and manure, and risk. The mule path slides lower than the wall line, bad angle for the roof, but the gap sings when you cross. Hale keeps the helmet peaking, a flirt with death swaying, as if the man under it changed his mind. Rain beads on steel, making little lenses. The knotty tide wicks water and loosens. The weight wants to torquey into wind. The bell rope twitches on a sly schedule. A pigeon rattles out of the tower like a deck of cards fanned. He cheats a glance to the opening, then drags his eyes back to the dust circle so hard his face aches. He wants one more thing before the rooftop mind relocates by the book, a second dust to fix the line. Delgado reads his micro-flinch. She knows the book, too. She signs for a shallower rise, just the idea of a head behind a parapet. The cover line is theirs now. The sniper knows it. Any smooth pattern will invite a low shot to take the hand holding the trick. She feels the radio man's chest tremble under her palm. If they can't move before full dark, morphine will slow the breath they can't afford to slow, and the problem won't be kinder. She imagines putting her own head up, rejects the gallant stupidity. She imagines the helmet falling, a man reaching and losing his face. Time collapses. She nods. The second shot dishonors the pencil line. It comes from the orchard on their right, a tile-snapping sound. No dust puff on slate, it never went there. It clips the stick near the bayonet lug, wood fibers punching out into splinters that spit into Hale's cheek and mouth. The helmet doesn't jump like a shot-through head. It yaws like an object. The world makes a new angle for death without asking. Hale's breath locks. He lowers the stick to keep the helmet from spinning away, and that move becomes a letter to the orchard. He sees what a second muzzle would see. A pole in a plane, a fixed pivot. The lie thins. He peels a splinter off his lip and tastes tannin and earth. For a moment of science, he thinks about echo and slope and orchard soil amplifying report like a tube, making one rifle sound doubled. Practical Hale doesn't care which. He lists risks: crossfire, concave ground, doctrine gone fractal. Bernardi sucks his teeth and freezes, boot hovering over wire. The world shrinks to an orange-brown vein between stakes. He doesn't need telling what a second shot means to his path. A wall doesn't protect crowns when a bullet skips low and takes you under the chin. He bites cheek till he tastes copper, then inches his boot back into mud. He taps orchardward air twice with bent fingers. 2 eyes in the trees, or 1 barrel moving, fast and good. Home ground turns stranger in a heartbeat. Delgado's clock shrieks. She resets it by force. If there are 2, suppression is a mask hiding teeth. She looks at rifle grenades, smokes that burn as they please, and knows wind will draw them thin, good for 20 seconds, and then a memory. She jumps past training, throws smoke anyway at the roof to control one angle and move under the fact of the other, letting the orchard feel powerful and therefore predictable. Lunacy with shape beats waiting. She hands Hale a piece of the choice with a look. Hale hears the plea and presses his face to stone to anchor thought. He samples the orchard's report. Brittle elevation crack or damp thud from trunks. The second slap came too fast, close. He marks a gutter line with the broken stub, an orchard arrow, and mutters, "Maybe 1 gun, maybe 2. Act like 2. He raises the helmet in a tight wobble, not a stand. Curiosity and foolishness. He watches for a fat tremor in that window frame and gets nothing. From the orchard, only the math pressure of presence. Rain goes coarse for 3 breaths, then backs out. A pigeon comes late out of the tower, wing beats stealing half a count of attention. Someone flinches, checks a sight. That incidental movement becomes a data point for eyes in the trees. The bell rope swings to a new cadence that is not gust. Interior draft, unhelpful. The town makes false tells. Hale swallows words. Even a whisper is a flare. Bernardi puts mouth to Hale's ear without lifting shoulders. Mule path's there. Gap is wired. I can cut it if someone lifts for me. He taps folded pliers in his pocket, hope and stupidity in tin. Only he can find that path in this light with blood humming. He'll need hands to lift the litter in the same half-minute. It's choreography bordering on hubris under orchard eyes. He waits to be told no so he can crawl into anonymity. The pause is consent. Delgado thinks of two bodies the litter needs, how men become taller when they lift. She imagines the orchard angle she cannot see, a bullet drinking from rib cages, trying to be careful. She scrapes her thumb along a smoke cap, notches like a shell. She'll have to throw to a gust that's hardly a gust now, a rhythm that's argument in air. She could wait for thicker dusk and sees contrast vanish instead, dust puffs turning into guesses. She tastes mud, time, iron. She sets her mouth and gives a plan in a voice with rock. Hale turns it into pictures he can step on. Helmet high left to bait the roof while smoke smears confidence. Rifle grenades throw a gray that won't be belief, but might make pause. Bernardi low under the lip, wire cut to a hiss, path taken in a crouch that is less than a man, but more than a shadow. Litter moves on account dovetailing with smoke's brief gift. Orchard stays a mouth you can't close. You walk past with eyes on boots. He hates it. He nods. He gives the only promise that makes it real. On my count or not at all. The helmet on the stick becomes a metronome and bait. The knot tears another wet thread under wind and weight. Hale pictures the pot spinning off at the dumbest moment, a head rolling into the lane and every hand twitching to grab it. How men die. He pinches the strap and drags it over the crosspiece, skinning knuckles to friction lock it. Leather smells goatish. He presses the rim into burlap, dimmer, not human. He will have to inject wobble to mask the wrongness. He signals the grenadier with a flat palm and two taps. The rifle smoke clinks as if ashamed. The man pulls the pin with his teeth and spits. The metallic taste blooms into superstition. He'll lob high to give the canister time to write before wind erases letters. He aims for the roof lip where dust taught them to look, not to blind, but to smear belief. He raises muzzle, Hale's shoulder under his forearm, and waits for the drop of a hand. Delgado runs her thumb along carotid again. Beat trips twice, then behaves. Wool collar under her fingers is cold. She looks down the lane and finds a rhythm she can fold into. An instructor's voice comes dumb and useful. Move when the world moves. She grips litter straps, feeling time punch like a nerve. She locks her jaw and waits for Hale's fingers. Hale counts a silent 3. At 2, he adjusts the helmet's wobble to read like a head that wants to check and doesn't. At 1, a gust comes ragged, split by buildings into 2 currents fighting over the lane. The bell rope swings opposite. He drops his hand and the grenadier fires. The rifle cough is low and contained. The grenade arcs, trailing a promise that will thin too soon. Smoke blooms an ugly flower, then wind tears it into ribbons. For a moment, the roof lip is a ghost line behind gray. Then the lane's breath pulls the veil apart, making portals and wedges a careful man can shoot through. The orchard makes no sound but expectation. The helmet rises into this new geometry, wobbling enough to sell. Hale wants one more dust. He gets burned composition, whetstone, and a pulley's squeak that makes every man think of hands. The first suppressive stitch bites through ragged smoke and chews slate, the tracer's red snapping in disapproval of wind. The roof doesn't answer. Doctrine says to and move. Pride says take the beautiful head the fools offer. Pride wins. A new white jump on the lip is the only warning. The shot comes tight through smoke, punching a second hole so near the first the strap flutters between them like a moth. The helmet jolts and holds. Hale's pencil line becomes a fact with teeth. Before he can own the clarity, the orchard speaks again, a lean note, wood skins off the stick, shaving hangs like a tongue. Closer, less echo. Either a second gun or the first gone low in the trees with discipline that insults. Either way, the lane is crosshatched. Delgado's eyes widen, not with fear, but necessity. She grabs the far handle and nods to the man across, both arrogant enough to stand into a world owned by guns. Hale inhales and holds the helmet lower to draw roof fire down and keep the orchard greedy for hands. He keeps eyes on the orchard edge where trunks make verticals to hide a barrel. He wants a third dust sign. The roof finally remembers doctrine and crawls. The orchard mind stays put, pleased with itself. It breathes when they breathe. It waits. Bernardi decides. Twilight will take away the difference between mud and stone. He belly scrapes to the gap, pulls pliers, sets teeth on wire with care that looks like love. The wire pings, metal on metal, a bell in miniature. He goes still. Silence. He nips a second strand and feeds it silently into shadow, becoming a stonemason at a different wall. He feels orchard attention on his spine like a thumb. Delgado lifts with her partner, and the litter rises into a larger world by inches. The radio man's head rolls. She catches it with her forearm to keep teeth from chattering into the lane. The rise makes them taller by a measure a bullet knows. She bends into nothing, torso making a curve a scope can catch even through smoke. The veil is already thinning to streaks. They go anyway. Count is what they have instead of safety. A mechanism sigh in the tower, the rope settling a notch, cuts 3 men's eyes upward, and that useless glance tempts a clever barrel. The orchard fires again for that shift, for neck tendons rising. The shot is too tight for roof, too low for doors. Hale measures distance by crack and splinter. Even one rifle can lie in 2 places within a heartbeat on this ground. Then the harm. The chin strap knot slips under rein. Recoil. Grease. The helmet dips, over-rotates. Puppet tilt. Silly in a way no head risks. For a half-second the lie confesses itself. Hale's world leans toward disaster. He snatches for leather to rebite it on the crosspiece, finds slick strap before eye believes. He wants the helmet to read as a man who changed his mind mid-peak, not a toy on a stick. He pulls. The pole lurches. Wet wood. Adrenaline. And the helmet jerks into a bad pivot, an advertisement more than decoy. Weight runs where it shouldn't. Somewhere in the orchard a mind decides a puppet is still ahead at the right angle. The rifle barks before the roof's last sound dies. The hit cuts the stick clean. Bayonet steel flashes as it drops. Splinters fly like seeds. A second round rides the first, not roof and not quite orchard. A shaved hiss over Delgado's bent back, finds wood again, taking a 2-finger bite from the pole. Hale feels weight leave too fast. His grip closes on rein. The helmet slides off the shorn end, hesitates on the terrace rim like a coin deciding, then tips. It rolls, teeters, drops toward the lane, strap whipping a lazy arc. The world contracts to that roll, the slick curve bouncing once off dead stone, the ring it will make. Every hand twitches to arrest the fall and salvage pride. Delgado hisses a curse because reaching is how you die. The helmet skips, catches on a bigger stone, hangs half in cover, half out, nodding in thin fog like a head trying to agree with a choice it hates. The orchard breathes again. The roof returns to silence. The lane has a new center, a lure that looks like surrender. Someone must decide to grab steel or let it go and own exposure. Whoever chooses will sign the decision with blood if wrong. Hale leaves it. They move the living. Delgado's hand is on the radio man's poncho, 2 fingers at a carotid slick with cold rain. Beats stutter while the SCR 536 gutters into a mosquito whine. Company net collapses into syllables that cannot help. She calculates how long a body rides shock without morphine before a jaw locks. She looks at the culvert mouth Bernardi promised and keeps counting. Bernardi, pressed to stone, points without lifting his wrist. The orchard begins not at trees, but at gaps between trunks, where a man can lie in mud as if at a window. He knows these walls. Rain fills missing mortar with mirrors, and what looks like cover becomes the sightline a century-old terrace was built to offer. He wants to move, and he waits for smoke that might be theater more than shield. Hale edges the ruined pole back like teasing a wary trout. The strap swivels the pot in a way too free, too puppet. He sees the flaw in his own improvisation, overconfidence that a gesture would read human to an eye that measures human for a living. The second shooter, or the same, chose the stick as the first bone to break. The lesson sticks. A gust runs the lane like a train, hammering the loose shutter on the house with the fresh dust scar. In that percussion, he feels a window open. Wind will thin smoke fast, but can make a helmet wobble human if timed right. Any new raise gives the orchard an arc to their foreheads. He grinds his teeth and waits for a different tell. Delgado's chin lifts, not to expose, but to see. The bell rope's sway is off rhythm. Has it been moving like that since the first shot, or only when rifle reports roll? If the tower is stirring, is it heat, pigeon, or a watcher's tiny lean? A shard of mirror near the mud glittered. The periscope's other half warps a black window mouth. Raise glass, and the lane collects a toll. She tucks that thought. Fog thickens breath into white. Hale watches his own life drift above the wall and knows glass downrange is watching too. They have 20 minutes of sight. He draws angles on wet stone, roof lip to their notch, orchard line to their notch, bell tower window to both. Fans potential miseries. If his read is wrong, he walks them into a crossfire patient enough to wait for his hand. The helmet, speared and dented twice, sits by his boot. Bales and strap behave like eel skin. He ties it tighter not to restrain, but to give it weight in wind. A strap tug can sell human quiver, but it might snap and throw their lie. He feels chalk shine on slate, old scar versus fresh, and plays pride against doctrine. Will he reuse a lip in drizzle toward dusk, or is that chalk a lure while the real pipe points from black leaves? Delgado cups the handy-talkie under her poncho for warmth. It breathes a wavering tone, coughs a single word, smoke, then dies into hiss. If tubes were free, if battery full, if coordinates could leave stone, ifs pile. Wind will be their fire mission. The only smoke they own rides their belts in luck. Bernardi produces a rifle smoke grenade, waxed label peeling in wet. He knows the burn is variable, sometimes a screen for half a minute, sometimes a cough that lifts in 20. Gusts will shear it. Delgado says throw 2. Hale adds a third with eyes. Together, they'll make a moving curtain that only knows its shape when wind gives it 1. Hale dares a hand over the wall, palm up to feel the bite. A flake ticks his knuckle. The orchard glass is watching for hands now. Blood thins into rain. The sting starts a timer he didn't ask for. He must move before piss-warm courage drains into stone. Delgado points at litter handles, canvas cold as a pond. She tells the carriers they lift on her count when smoke moves, not when it blooms. In this wind, bloom lies. She glances at the bell rope again. It bows at a moment that doesn't fit gust. A pigeon flares from the tower mouth in the same beat, a cutaway that could be cue or noise. She ignores both. Hale studies the tower window's edge, a thin, unnatural line within black, a vertical glare shaved thin, as if a mirror catches sky and returns it wrong. If a spotter has glass there, he marks and murmurs. Or a shaving mirror hangs on a nail, swaying with the rope, a town prank without malice. He needs proof made of light, not want. He doesn't fire at the mirror. He fires at the hand he imagines holds a stick just below the sill, where stone is worn by fingers pulling rope across years. The slug claps stone. A high cry snaps back, echoing down the tower throat like a bell struck off key. The mirror disappears. The rope stops. A pigeon startles, then settles. Background lies fall away. Rifle smokes arc, curl, and unspool like wool in wind. They flower on cue, then tear, corridors between slivers where men die. The shutter bang stutters offbeat. Gusts pulse in ways that don't match smoke's breath. 30 seconds becomes 20, becomes a blind, no wider than shoulders. Delgado's glance is a hammer. Now. The helmet still nods on the wall where they jammed it, punched through twice, frayed strap-whipping like a nervous hand. Hale lets it show once more. Tiny rise, human doubt, because pride will yank a trigger for the same silhouette twice if it thinks it owns the shot. He taps the pole twice. Blink, and we go. They wait for rope to be still and the shutter to clap, for 2 coughs of wind answering across the lane, and Hale raises the decoy a hair above the crown. Wrong for a heartbeat, corrected with a tremor. The edge peers over stone, nods twice, then leans as if to ask. Pride pulls. The punch lands clean. Dust leaps. Crack follows. Hale says, "Now," without voice, and 3 rifles stitch the lip. Bits of slate spit. The roof lip is pinned for 2 counts. If he holds for a third, he signs his name. The orchard coughs second, almost snapping the bayonet. The stick quivers. Strap whips, and 8. Lower, nearer. Echo throws voices around corners. Hale flattens and holds the lie. The orchard keeps greed for hands. Bernardi is at the gap. The litter skims dirt. Barbs tug like teeth. Rust camouflaged by mud hooks his heel. He sets foot slow. Heel first, toe searching. The Kansas kid hunches, eyes white. The radio man murmurs a name or a ghost. They lift. They must. Knees bend. Canvas creaks. The orchard clacks. Bark jumps off the terrace. A breath puff. Hale stares at the tower. No glitter now. Rope dead. A hand was there. Observation can be killed. He leans into sights, dragging breath into stillness, and he saves his last rounds for angles that matter. Delgado pulls and the litter rises. In that second, both carriers stand, blades of their shoulders above the wall. Targets for a breath. Hale's stomach flips. Smoke meets them at shoulder height, thinning to gauze that hides color but not shape. Shapes get shot. They blur into it and go. The next shot goes where a mirror once told a shooter a head would rise. It punches the decoy again, cleaving steel. The strap snaps like a tendon, and the pot spins into a hard nod. That wrong motion, fast, inhuman, pulls a greedy follow-up that kisses the stick and drives it down. The orchard reaches at a shadow and misses, close enough to whisper through canvas. Later they will find a char on the strap, black edge, burned cotton, smelling sweet. Bernardi's heel finds wire and presses it flat into mud. The Kansas kid hears rust bones break and thinks they're his. Step, step. Slate jumps with fireflies, chips spitting. The wall takes 3 impacts that should have been ribs. Hale keeps the lip bracketed. Slate freckles white in dusk. The pot is now junk and a banner. He offers a fraction of his shoulder to sell cover without feeding it. Wind stops. Shutter stills. Rope hangs like a line to end. Sound arrives late as always. If you count the delay, you count the space between breath and death. He counts, then dares the runners forward. They clear the gap. The path runs beneath the lip. The roof can't see unless the shooter leans 8 inches past doctrine. Rain and cold and pride keep men in hides. The unknown has put 2 from the roof and 2 from orchard. If he obeys the book, he is gone. If he disobeys, he is in love with his own eye. Delgado waves 2 more, runners with bandages and a spare blanket, because cold steals as hard as blood. They go low, ankles burning. Smoke thins to the smell of powder and a candy sweetness that doesn't belong in rain. The orchard quiets, counting or empty or throwing its voice. The culvert breathes wet. The square beyond is gray-pocketed. No civilians, no flags. A shutter flaps and stops as if someone remembered a rule. The bell does not ring. Hale moves along the terrace, counting slate scars left to right. A smaller puff on a chimney cap 2 houses over makes his gut whisper 3. His head says weather can shed old chips. He clamps down and keeps arc short and hard at the lip. Bernardi leads under a notch of missing stones. It reads cover. It's a frame if you stand. He goes knee first, then elbow, teaching by example. The litter drags, then slides. The radio man's hand finds the Kansas kid's sleeve and holds. Home, he says. Almost, the kid lies. Fog clings like a beard to stone, flattening sound, blunting edges, stealing pupils from windows. Hale counts maybe 15 minutes of light. Dusk here goes gray fast, then black. Spotting becomes faith. The sniper knows it. Night is friend of glass, enemy of evac. Delgado looks at him. Now or the night does. He nods because arguing with a clock wastes both. They make the last crossing at the lane's mouth in a hurry that looks slow because their bodies are cooked. The helmet remains jammed in a crack, nodding in fog like a man refusing or agreeing. Hale burns one more magazine at the lip, then rakes low through the orchard rows, aiming where knee meets dirt and cheek meets wood. The answer is an angry chatter, and then silence, a decision reached. The rope moves once, slight, as if brushed. Hale swings and sees no mirror now, no glitter, just dark like an eye closed. Doctrine says deny high ground. He saves a round. They use that heartbeat to vanish down the mule path under terraces where earth smells of salt and old stone. The culvert squeezes and lets go, and the lane that was a sentence becomes a hill again. They reach a little courtyard where a well sits with its lid chipped, white chalk showing through. The litter rests on bricks. The radio man coughs thick. Delgado checks a pulse, presses morphine into thigh. The Surrette hisses. Needle finds muscle. The Kansas kid sags, half laughs, almost cries. Bernardi wipes mud off a heel and doesn't look at what came off. Hale counts rounds with 2 fingers on brass coins of cartridges in a clip, then closes his fist and listens. Back on the lane, the pot takes wind and nods. Poor man's scarecrow, a head that saved heads by asking for punishment twice. Morning, if they go back, will show 3 pale commas on slate and a black scuff on the terrace lip where tracers skated. Maybe a drop of blood at the tower where a hand slipped. They won't know if one set of lungs or 2 breathed between dust and crack. For now, shutters still. Smoke's last threads twine with fog and lose themselves. Wind stalls. Boots rasp on stone and recede toward a road no longer ruled. The bell stays dumb. Hale glances once to the bend ahead. Delgado lifts 2 fingers. They shoulder the litter and move.